In the fast-paced semiconductor industry, distinguishing oneself and gaining relevant experience is crucial for students and professionals starting their careers. The debate between pursuing internships and focusing on publications is significant, as each path offers different benefits and challenges that can impact long-term success in this field. Internships provide practical experience, immersing individuals in the real-world application of semiconductor technology. This hands-on approach allows interns to learn about industry-standard tools and processes, understand the intricacies of semiconductor applications, and build valuable professional networks. Gaining practical skills and adapting to workplace culture through internships makes individuals more employable and versatile in the long run. However, internships have limitations, including a narrow scope of work that may limit learning to specific tasks without offering a broad understanding of the field. Additionally, the temporary nature of internships provides only a brief glimpse into the semiconductor world. On the other hand, publications offer distinct advantages, particularly in academic recognition. They enhance an individual's academic profile, establish credibility, and contribute to the semiconductor field's body of knowledge. Engaging in research and publication develops critical thinking, problem-solving, and analytical skills, essential for addressing complex semiconductor issues. The long-term impact of publications on the field can be advantageous as they influence future technological advancements. The journey towards publication, however, presents its own set of challenges. The research and publication are time-consuming and can detract from gaining practical industry experience. The competitive nature of academic publishing, especially in high-impact journals, adds significant pressure and stress, highlighting the difficulties of making a mark through publications in the semiconductor industry. Deciding between internships and publications requires careful consideration of one's career goals and learning preferences. If the aim is to gain practical skills and immediate job opportunities, internships are advisable. Publications might be better for those looking to contribute to academic knowledge and research. Yet, it is not strictly an either/or decision. Balancing internships and publications can provide a comprehensive skill set and academic standing. Seeking mentorship is vital in this decision-making process. Talking to industry professionals and professors can offer insights and guidance tailored to individual career aspirations, helping to navigate the pros and cons of each option. This advice can be crucial in aligning with one's career goals and the semiconductor industry's demands. In conclusion, both internships and publications hold significant value in the semiconductor industry, and the choice between them depends on personal career objectives and how one wishes to advance. By understanding these objectives and leveraging opportunities in both areas, individuals can chart a path to success. The journey's quality, as well as the destination, matters greatly. Making informed choices can pave the way to a fulfilling career in semiconductors. For more insights and career advice in the semiconductor industry, remember to engage with the community and seek continuous learning opportunities.